of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the committee's motion adopted on Friday, February 5th of this year, the committee is meeting to study all aspects of COVID-19 spending and programs. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th of this year, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website so that you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I'd like to also remind folks that we're not to take screenshots off the screen in accordance with the House Commons rules. So I would like to welcome the witnesses from across the country. If you could hold your remarks to about 5 minutes, that would be helpful. And then after all witnesses have made their presentation, we will go to a series of rounds of questions with members. I might point out as well, although it says COVID-19 spending and programs, if you have any brilliant ideas on where we should be going on spending when we put the COVID-19 behind us, we're always open to that as well. And before I start with the first witness, I might have caused a little confusion at the close of the meeting the other day on next week. So we will deal with whatever day. I don't think the day's established yet. It's a constituency week. But on C224, which is Mr. St. Marie's private members bill, on clause by clause on that, we will start on that. And then that will be followed by Larry Maguire's private members bill. And that will complete that day. But anyone who has witnesses on Mr. Maguire's bill, please have their your witness list into the clerk certainly by Sunday night, I think, to give time to have them to appear the following week. And then the other day next week, we will have a public meeting with the law clerk relative to the motion that passed in an earlier session of this committee. So with that, is Dan Kelly here yet? I don't see him. Okay, we'll go to the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Angela McEwen, Senior Economist, National Services. Do I see you, Angela?
She's also not here, Mr. Chair.
Oh, she's not here either? Okay, then we will start with I guess we'll start with you, Mr. Mike Cassidy, with Coach Atlantic Maritime Bus. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to all. I represent an industry that is highly capital intensive, low margins, and very fragile, the bus motor coach industry across our country. And in the last 15 years, we've had a consolidation, we've had a rationalization within our industry with fewer and fewer motor coach bus operators working within our Canadian marketplace. And unfortunately, with that type of industry, we have COVID-19 in the last year, and we have COVID-19 with us for 2021. And it's been devastating, not only for my company, but for the industry. And to put it in perspective, when I compare our 2019 financial statement results to 2020 and our projections for 2021, it is a bleak picture because we feel in our industry that 2021 is not going to be any better than 2020 and could be worse. 2019, our best year in the business, we did $42 million in gross sales. 50% of that number, $21 million, was directly related to the tourism sector, cruise ship arrivals and multi-day tours. We did not have in 2020 cruise ship arrivals or multi-day tours. We do not expect cruise ship and multi-day tours for 2021. So we have thousands of motor coaches parked across this country with no work, and it's going to be 2 years back to back. We are essential to tourism. We are essential to passenger travel. And I realize today nobody really needs a motor coach, but we have to realize in May 2022, what we're considering the rebound year, our buses are going to be essential again, as we are an economic driver in our country. Something to think about. When I look at our maritime bus intercity division that we operate here in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and we look at the municipal transit on Prince Edward Island, we are down over 50%. Now, that's better than having no business at all. And the gratifying element of intercity and transit, our buses are on the road. We are providing essential services. We have time-sensitive parcel freight each and every day that has to be moved. We do blood work to make sure our hospitals within our maritime provinces have the blood that is needed out of the Canadian Blood Supply of Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. At least the buses are moving. Operating expenses are higher than revenue in this stress COVID environment, but they are moving. You ask, with $42 million, the math, we were $33 million lost in gross revenue in 2020. We're expecting 2021 to be another $30 million lost in gross revenue. How do companies like ourselves survive? Well, definitely we have to give credit to the programs of 2020. They were rolled out quickly. They were shotgun. I realize that. But by being quick, by being shotgun, it got money into our bank accounts. We have the wage subsidy. We have the rent subsidy that was very, very effective for our industry and a company like ours. We had the RRRF, your relief and recovery programs that were put in place. Fast, no charter bank involvement at all, done through our regional development organizations. A perfect program. When I think of our provincial municipal transit, the Safe Restart program to municipalities to help them with their transit operations, it was effective, and we hope that that type of program will be extended April the 1st. We hope the RRRF program will be extended April 1st. We are saying now that wage and rent subsidies for the hardest hit industries has to be considered to be extended from June of this year. Those are the type of programs that got us to where we are now. The huge losses that we have experienced. Last year, we had a 6-month deferral with our chartered banks on principal, and that was a huge cash flow saving. But the industry has been decimated. It's devastating to look at the staff that are not with us. It's devastating to look at the financial results, but we have to be positive. And when I look at our industry, I look at Intercity. Intercity, I have always said, is public transit on provincial highways, no different than public transit on municipal streets. Why can't Intercity operators be an eligible recipient for public transit infrastructure funds on a capital subsidy? Could we be recipients of Safe Restart programs? Because when we're in the rural areas, we are the public transit system for the rural areas. And we have been advocating prior to COVID-19 that we should be eligible for the similar programs of the municipal transit. We have just submitted last week for the pre-consultations a brand new group called the Coast to Coast Bus Coalition, so we can reestablish intercity busing from the east to the west and throughout our country with a feeder system. But I've always said we need to reinstate the Trans-Canada line. You need a Trans-Canada bus line, companies interlining to move parcels and to move passengers, something that we have to think about. Then you get into these motor coaches, the thousands that are sitting. And I only ask you to consider this, please. When they are sitting, how do we get them ready, willing, and able to go to work in May 2022? When it's the cruise ship ports, we all know that cruise ships don't dock if they're not buses on the wharf. Can we have a federal program of monies going into the ports? Can those ports have the discretionary power to administer those funds for strategic service providers to cruise ships? Could there be an arrival fee per passenger to help the ports administer funds for strategic service providers? Could there be a program put in place for motor coaches where it could be a $40,000 loan for each and every motor coach? And if you bring your buses back to work in 2022, 2023, 2024, could it be forgivable, knowing that you can bring your buses back to make sure we are the economic provider that this industry has been so good at being able to support many, many businesses. But now our industry is asking for support. And as I close, and this is just not for my industry, the motor coach industry and the tourism industry and highly impacted businesses, but for all, succession planning is something that we are going to have to think about. Many of us in business are older. I am 67 this year. I did not expect that this is how I was going to finish my business career. I am committed to stand with my company and my 3 sons that are with me in this company to make sure we get through and beyond COVID-19. But it's almost enough is enough. The stress, the strain, the responsibility. And there should be good tax considerations for succession planning as we pass the torch on to the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Cassidy.
Thanks very much. A quick question for Mr. Cassidy. One of the things that I couldn't help but notice is you kind of presented an easy fix for us. We get a lot of money that we announced recently for transit. If we actually allowed intercity sort of provincial highway transit, as you sort of framed it, to be eligible the same way that municipal transit systems are for the recently announced funding for public transit, does that more or less solve your problem?
Thank you very much, Member Fraser. Yes, there is no question, and I think that I saw nods when I was speaking. Public transit on provincial highways is no different than public transit on municipal streets. We just took delivery of municipal transit buses this week. They're $550,000 on average for a typical municipal bus. A motor coach today is $610,000. And we have always said that if you could have a capital subsidy for your operating rolling stock, a one-time subsidy where those buses have a 10 to 12 year useful life. We all know how hard it is each and every year asking for operating subsidies. The capital subsidy, if we could mirror that in intercity, similar to municipal, we could be in a position as owner operators where you do not have to pay monies and cash flow for principal and interest. You have monies available for operating costs. So we feel eligibility under Public Transit Infrastructure Fund, including the Intercity, is a perfect recommendation.
Move on, and we'll go to a 2.5-minute round with first Miss May, and then Mr. Julian, and then followed by Miss Jansen on a 5-minute round. Miss May, 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci. Je vais commencer.
Thank you very much. I'm going to begin in French. And a big thank you to my colleague, Mr. Sainte-Marie, for his generosity.
To Mike Cassidy. As you'll probably know, and it's an honor to speak with you, sir. I've watched your valiant work on behalf of maritime bus lines from the other coast, where I'm working with Wilson's Bus Lines. I want to give you the time to explain the Coast to Coast Bus Coalition vision. And parenthetically, before the Transport Committee last week, I put the question to the Deputy Minister of Transportation, what were we going to do to save our ground transportation outside of the inner city buses, but between cities. He said, we're working on it, but we think it's mostly provincial jurisdiction. I think your vision solves that problem. I want to give you the time to explain it.
Mike?
Thank you very much, Member May. It dates back to the summer of 2012, when we had one of the largest transportation companies in the world, Keolis, which owns Orleans in Quebec, which owned Acadian Lines in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. And they stated in the summer of 2012 that they were going to surrender their motor carrier rights and leave the maritime provinces because they were losing $2 million a year, evidence provided to the Nova Scotia and New Brunswick Board of Public Utilities. At the time, Member May, I did not understand Intercity. I had a very good understanding of municipal transit, which is completely different than my motor coach operation. Transit is one of need. Normally in the motor coach business of groups, it's a want. The need is different. We stepped up to the plate and said that our region was going to have inner city transportation. We need it. 2018, when Greyhound made the financial decision to surrender their motor carrier rights, Sudbury, Ontario, West. That was the same feeling that I had in 2012. I spent 2019 providing data to Transport Canada, waiting for their study to be issued, talking about inner city across this country. I was on the media constantly in those early times when Greyhound pulled out of the area in the region, talking about what I call my Trans-Canada Bus Corridor Network. It is so important to have a bus corridor across this country, and then with feeder routes into the actual corridor. Now we had a chance where there are 4 companies, and it's ironic that it's Wilson's on the West Coast and Maritime Bus on the East Coast. We have Pacific Western E-Bus in Alberta, and then we have Casper Transportation in Northern Ontario. 4 companies coming together with the same dream. Inner city regionally is important, but we know we have to cross provincial borders. And once we start to cross provincial borders, we need all stakeholders. I do not want to be able to say the province says it's federal, the federal says it's provincial jurisdiction. We're in this together. And when you look at the airlines, you look at Via Rail in the pandemic, most of us in this country would agree that buses have remained and they have been reliable, and we have got the work done. And I cherish the day, cost effective. It has to be a cost effective bus corridor with a feeder system that we can have for our country. And we do not have to have large corporations, international corporations, telling us that we cannot successfully run bus companies in Canada. We have proven the opposite, Member May, and I still think we can prove that we can make this happen.
Okay, we are going to have to cut it there. We're a little over time. Mr. Jolie, I have a quick question for Mike Cassidy, and then Peter is a quick motion. Mike, in the beginning, you know where I live and I'm riding a Malpeque here, and I have a business just up the rural road here that brings in about 300,000 a year just from the cruise ships. So I see your buses, your charter buses going by there. You said in the beginning that the your charter buses will have been idle pretty well 2 years. I farm. I know what it's like when you leave a piece of equipment idle. You just don't hop in and start it up. And you said in your remarks, you need to be ready, willing, and able to roll those buses when they need to run. How are you going to do that, and what do you need to do to have them in shape to go? What does the government need to be doing?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In our industry, if you have lot rot or if you sit with the motor vehicle, and especially after 2 years, we're estimating that it's going to be $20,000 to $25,000 per motor coach to get that coach up, willing, and able to go to work in 2022. And Mr. Chair, when I mentioned is there a loan that could be put in place per motor coach? That amount of money could help us get our coaches ready, willing, and able. And no different when we talk about HASCAP and a forgivable portion, or $80,000, forgivable $40,000 for small businesses. It's the same concept in the motor coach business. If we bring our buses to the dock, if the person up the road that depends on $300,000 for cruise ship arrivals, we bring our buses to the dock in 2022, 2023, 2024, have a portion or all of the loan forgivable. But it's just not your business up the road, Mr. Chair. We have hotels, we have small motels that are up for sale now because our motor coaches are not stopping at their doors, and people on our motor coaches are not paying for the rooms. They're not getting their meals. It's just, as we all know, a trickle-down effect, but it's dangerous, very dangerous.
Okay. Look, I'll release the witnesses before we quickly go to Peter's motion. Look, all the witnesses, thank you. These are extremely difficult times, we know that, but on the positive side, there's one thing that always amazes me is the ideas that come forward from the total community. Good ideas here today from the unions, from operators, from businesses, etc. There's tremendous ideas out there, and we welcome them at this committee, and we welcome the constructive criticism as well. And we try to work across party lines to see what we can do. So thank you very much for your presentations. We understand the heartfelt concern in your area. So thank you again to the witnesses. Peter, you had a quick statement.
Yes, well, just a point of order, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much for that, and thanks for our terrific witnesses. They were amazing today, and we learned a lot. For subsequent weeks, as we talked about in the motion I presented a couple of weeks ago to start this study, we talked about the parties actually providing their witnesses and scheduling their witnesses. So I just want to be clear that that's the intent, that we would be submitting a list for the next week or the week after. Next week, I understand, is more targeted sessions, but for the following week, of course, ensuring that we get the witnesses that we want to have up. And I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, that's the next week is tied up with law clerk and C208, and there'll probably be another session on C208 after that in the following week, Larry Maguire's bill. Then we will have to see what comes at us from Parliament, but our intent certainly is to keep going with witnesses on COVID-19 this session today. You can see the good ideas that are coming forward. I think we can be helpful to everyone in terms of providing that information up the line as well. So yes, that's the intent. We already have, I would say, from the parties, I'd have to ask the clerk for sure, but we must have 40 or 50 witnesses already on those lists. So we'll have to sit down as a steering committee and do some priorities, I'd suggest, after we get through next week. Okay, with that, thanks all. Meeting adjourned. Take care.
Thank you.
And thanks, Gabriel.